And good evening, everyone. Hope you liked our intro song there. It is one of my favorites. Always brings tears to my eyes. So I really wanted to start today with that one. So yeah, today is the 13th of December. So that is the Lucia Day, and our show kind of fits with those days, so I'm actually quite pleased with that. And of course we have our third Subday of Advent. So
yes, we do.
Yeah.
Subday.
And we are sorry about the delay there. We had, or I had some boomer tech issues. Didn't quite know what I was doing. So yeah, thank you for being patient with me. So Katrina, what did what did you think of the song?
Yes. I know that one, and I sung it before. I had to sing it in school because school did an event sort of around the Lucia Day, and I've learnt it and I've sung it. I can't remember all the words, but I certainly could remember the tune, and it's a very beautiful song. Indeed.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to sing as well.
Yeah, I always sung
especially
that. Yeah, just continue.
I think it's especially nice when it is sung in sort of I can't remember, it's 3 or 4 part harmony. I probably would have always lower line.
Yeah. I always sang that as a
I just heard myself.
Ah, are you having
I just heard myself on the background of all their Lynx. There was quite an echo, but it was strangely dislocated from the rest of my sentence. It was the very first part of my sentence.
That is odd.
Yes, saying things much earlier.
Yeah, I'm trying to adjust again. Oh, welcome, Big Air Tsunami, and thank you for the Ninja Guinea. That is very generous of you, and it's good to see you, as always.
A Ninja Guinea?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Big Head Tsunami. Thank you very much for the ninja car. Is that the first time we got a ninja car? Is that the second time we got a ninja car?
It's the second.
Cool.
Syrup also gave us one a few episodes ago. So, generous people we have in our sphere. So that is lovely.
There's major audio distortion on my end. Like, things are being repeated from earlier in what we've said.
That is odd. I don't think anything.
Have you got the stream open anywhere?
I do, but I don't have any audio on, of course. So.
Maybe Obs is streaming any audio that comes from your desktop.
I have you on my desktop, so.
Okay. Yeah. This is quite odd. I don't think we've even encountered this to this level before. This is
always the sound issues.
Everything is repeating. There's me back in time saying things over current me.
Yeah. Should you try to rejoin the call, perhaps?
Yeah. I'll exit the call and then I'll come back in. Oh my goodness.
The eternal problem with the audio. Sorry, guys. It seems like when we have finally figured out one thing, then another thing pops up. So it's a never-ending problem, it seems. But luckily, it's not just us, so I can breathe a sigh of relief from that, at least. So yeah. I was going to say a bit about the Sia tradition.
I've sorted out what was happening. Somewhere in my browser, I had the stream open. And so I could also hear it through my headphones. I was interfering with myself.
You shouldn't do that. Bad things happen when you interfere with yourself.
Doesn't sound right. Never mind.
It was very innocently meant, I can assure everyone.
Hello, viewers. Hi. You just joined me boom attacking. Just straight up boom attacking.
Yeah, well, we all have those days. I was trying to stream on the wrong profile and couldn't understand why it didn't work, so yeah. It's not Friday, but it is the 13th, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Maybe it does. Maybe it does.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get on with things.
Yeah. Okay, so today is the Lucia Day, and Lucia was a Christian martyr. She lived in the 300s in Rome, and she was a Christian and came from a fairly well-off family, and she got betrothed to a pagan man, and apparently that didn't go very well. So because she didn't want to give up on her own faith, so apparently she managed to persuade her mother to give away her dowry to the poor, and that made him a bit pesky, so he actually reported her to the authorities, or so the story goes. So that's when her prosecution started. She is tied to light because she was giving food to Christians hiding in the catacombs under Rome. And according to legend, she had a wreath with lights on her head, like we see in today's tradition, in order for her to be able to carry with her more food, because she had both her hands free. So in Scandinavia, that is celebrated now with light processions. In Norway, it's particularly with the children. In school and in daycare and everything. Some do it for the care homes for the elderly, and that is very popular among the older generation, of course. In Norway, we do have many traditions that focus around the children like that, including on the 17th of May, which is our national day. And so basically, you wear white dresses, or even the boys, and one girl is chosen to be Lucia, and the other girls are also carrying candles, but in their hands, and so are the boys. And quite a few places they also have pointy hats, like I showed in the picture for the song. So we did that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yes?
I'm just wondering if the pointy hats of any particular significance. I know there was a type of hat that free citizens of Rome wore.
Yeah, from what I've found, many of the traditions in today's Lucia processions comes from the Middle Ages. So that might be the case with the boys as well. It does remind me of the slightly ridiculous headdresses that some overclass women wore in the 1300s and stuff. There was also pointy hats, but that was mostly women, and they usually had, fabric flowing from the top and everything.
I know the sort you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
The type everyone stereotypically thinks of when they think of princess costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I always found those a bit silly, but I'm sure they were the thing to wear back in the day, so I won't be too critical.
They look a bit like something that was, certainly used in British schools way back, sort of like maybe in the Victorian eras, called a dunce's cap. It's a big triangular cap a kid would like sit wearing in like the corner of the room, doing something really stupid.
Oh, I didn't know about that. That is interesting.
Yeah, I think those were a thing. They were definitely a thing. I'm just not that well up on when they were a thing. But yeah, they remind me of those hats.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah. Lucia seems like a very interesting figure.
Yeah. I have to admit I didn't really understand why we celebrated her up in Norway, because in my mind she was so tied to Rome specifically. So for me that was a bit hard to wrap my mind around as a kid.
That's true.
Yeah, but it might actually be one I will look into a bit more, because it seems like her story is a bit interesting.
No, it does seem like it, yeah.
Yeah. Some suspect that she is inspired by the German Christ child. I'm not going to try to pronounce that in German. But that is supposedly a little girl dressed in white with a paper crown and burning wax lights in her hair. And in some places she went around giving Christmas gifts with Saint Nicholas. So she is one of his companions in some places.
What's the words again? Maybe I could have a crack at pronouncing it in German.
Christkindchen or Kindelen.
Oh, Christkindchen. I think.
Yeah.
You would say. Yeah, I think so. Probably that isn't the best pronunciation. But yeah.
I chose
Christmas.
French instead of German, so I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce German words, so you're guaranteed better than me.
I couldn't really get the French pronunciation great sometimes.
Yeah.
It was a little bit foreign to me. I think German pronunciation is more similar to English, to be honest.
That might be the case. Up here in Scandinavia, it has sort of merged with an old Norse custom called the Lucy tradition. Lucy was a giant, and some legends that have survived down to us have her at leading a procession that is very similar to the Wild Hunt. So it might be a later derivative of the Wild Hunt. But that was called Luciferda. So that might be more from the Middle Ages. It's a ghost ride, basically, that happens during night. And it was a parallel to Åskåreid, which was, the Wild Hunt. And also the day was originally on the solstice, but it changed when we changed calendar from the Julian calendar. So it was the Lucy night was the beginning of the Yule season, which I have heard some places that is actually lasted through December and January, so it was quite some time. But the main point was that it is the darkest night, the darkest time of the year. And Lucy was, over the years, became a figure that was making sure that everyone did everything they were supposed to do for Christmas. Up here we had to, you had to have the Christmas bear and 7 sorts of Christmas cookies, for example. Everything was supposed to be ready to...
Precisely 7.
Yeah. Always 7.
Precisely 7 cookies.
Yeah, and that's...
I don't even know 7 cookies off the top of my head.
Oh, that is alive and well in Norway, but quite a few have started to buy them instead. I actually have some old irons to bake some of those cookies with from my mother. I think they're from my grandmother or great-grandmother originally, so that is cast iron, and they are beautifully decorated. So it's sort of like almost like pancakes, but as a dessert kind of pancake, so to speak.
Whoa. Canadian reports that Finland go hard with their cookies, apparently. They're in a shape considered dubious by many other people. Sunwheel cookies. Yes.
Yeah. Well, good evening, Canadian. It's good to see you. My favorite as a kid was what we called fork press cookies. It was basically just rolling balls with the dough and pressing them flat with a fork to make a pattern. It's just very basic vanilla cookies, basically, but I always loved them. There is no Christmas without them. So,
sometimes simple is best. I have
yeah.
bought Lebkuchen this year, but when it comes to the English stuff, I am going to make mince pies. I don't feel like I want to cheat on those this year.
Yeah.
There
is no Christmas without them. Sorry, I have to make away. There. I won't bake 7 sorts this year, but I will make some. So.
But the cookie gods will be displeased.
Yeah, I'm going to get Lucy on my tail or trail. I don't have a tail. Yeah,
that's ironic considering you're.
Yeah. Well, I know this is going to shock quite a few people, but I don't actually have fur either. So I'm not a furry.
No sentient cats. Not that sort of channel.
Yeah. But Lucy had a tendency to check the cookie baking. So she was coming in and tasting both the cookies and the beer, and if she wasn't satisfied, she would go a bit crazy with the chimney, actually, and could even start to try to pull it down, quite a bit of it, the topmost part. So yeah, you better not be late with that, apparently.
Yeah. I would just like to thank Never Surrender for the diamond.
Oh, thank you.
Which is very cool. Cheers, ladies. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too. And Merry Yule, if that's your thing.
God Jul, everyone. Merry Christmas. It's good to have you here.
Full of Weihnachten if we're adding in the languages. There we go.
Yeah. There's actually some who connect Lucy with Lilith of the old Jewish tradition. I would say that is quite a late retrofit when Christianity came in.
Does sound like it.
Yeah. Because it sounds more like she was a part of the Hulder people. That is one of the kinds from the underworld. Either that or she was a troll. So yeah. But today's custom started mostly in Sweden. The way we know it today. It was taken up in Stockholm in 1927 with a Lucia procession, and that got exported through the rest of Scandinavia and actually quite a few parts of Europe, including Norway, and was fully established by 1950s. So I do think Sweden is the country where it still stays the strongest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd certainly heard of it in that context of Sweden, and I know they really love it. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a little history lesson on Lucia. And we thought a good transition from that would be to hear the story of the cat on Dovrefjell. Dovrefjell is a mountain range in southern Norway. So, yeah, let's put on the first story for tonight. The Cat of Dovrefjell. There once was a man up in Finnmark who had caught a great white bear, and he was going down to the King of Denmark with it. As it happened, he came to Dovrefjell on Christmas Eve, and he came to the cottage of a man named Halvor. He asked if he and his bear could spend the night. "Dear me," said Halvor, "we have no room to offer anyone now, because every Christmas Eve so many trolls descend upon us that we have to take our leave of the house, so we don't even have a roof over our own heads." "Oh, you might let us spend the night still," said the man. "My bear can sleep under the stove there, and I can sleep in the side room." He kept asking for so long that in the end he was allowed to stay. Then the people left the house, having set the table for the trolls with sour cream porridge, lutefisk and sausage, and every other good food, as if to any other guests they would have at table. It wasn't long until the trolls came knocking. Some were large, some were small, some had long tails, and others had no tail at all, and some had long, long noses. And then they ate and drank and tasted every dish. But then one of the troll children caught sight of the white bear under the stove. So he took a piece of sausage on his fork, warmed it by the fire, before placing it in front of the bear's nose. The sausage was so hot it burned him, so the white bear leapt up, roared, and chased everyone out of the house, both big and small. The next year, Halvor was out in the afternoon of Christmas Eve getting some wood for the weekend, for he was expecting the trolls again. He was hard at work chopping when he heard from the wood, "Halvor! Halvor!" "Yes," he answered. "Do you still have that large cat of yours?" "Yes, she sleeps under the stove," Halvor replied. "And that's not all. Now she's got 7 kittens as well, and they are much larger and fiercer than she is." "Then we're never coming back to your place," the troll shouted from the woods. And since that time, the trolls have not eaten Christmas porridge at Halvor's on Dovrefjell. So yeah, that was the first story for tonight. It is a short, fun one. I think we can conclude that there are no bears on the Norwegian mountains, considering the trolls didn't know what a bear was. I'm not quite sure if they got confused by the white collar or something, but large kitty, you could say.
Maybe they did. Maybe they got confused because they'd never seen a bear in a collar.
Yeah.
Or it just looked smaller when it was under the table.
Yeah.
Right?
That might be the case.
Sour cream porridge, by the way. Is that good?
Yeah, it's quite tasty. It is a bit filling. You know, you can't really eat that much of it, or at least I can't do it. It's basically boiled sour cream and the process will make it give off butter. That will have to you have to take off, and then you can add it again later if you want. But it's basically just sour cream. So
So it doesn't really contain any oats. I see.
No seeds. That is all sour cream.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I was just like wondering, because in Britain, sort of the Scottish consider themselves the owners of porridge. They're quite particular about porridge.
Isn't
Scotland.
that oatmeal?
Yes, and that's what we call a porridge, and that is very much oats. And I was just like, wait, sour cream and porridge? Maybe that works, but no, it is just sour cream.
Yeah, well, in Norway, all of those things are called porridge. If it's made with oats or rice or wheat, all of those, or any kind of flour, really, and of course with sour cream, that is all called porridge. So,
nice.
Yeah, so we differentiate by saying what kind of ingredients it is, the main ingredient, with sour cream or rice porridge or oat porridge or wheat porridge. So, yeah.
Yeah, just picking up on Canadian here. Yeah, caviar smetana for toast breads at Christmas. Caviar seems to be a little more fancy in Britain than it is maybe in some other parts of the world. Like I see other parts of the world eating caviar maybe a bit more regularly.
For over here, it's quite a common spread for toast, or not toast, but slices of bread. It's mainly one that is basically just caviar, and then it's one that is mixed with mayonnaise, so it's a bit milder in the taste. But it's not the expensive kind, it's not the Russian caviar that you see in from luxury people or anything. It's very inexpensive. Yeah. So
no, whenever anyone talks about caviar, like most people in Britain just think fancy, but no, not necessarily. It's just fish eggs.
Yeah, it's from salmon, so
salmon, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was an interesting little story and plot twist. No cat.
Yeah. And it was quite funny that she's got kittens now, all 7 of them, and they are bigger and more fierce than she is. So, that was a bit fun. So, but don't go poking a bear with a hot sausage on the nose.
Nope, don't do that.
No.
Generally, if you see a bear, I think the drill is to back away.
But not running. Actually, that will only make it run after you. So, yeah.
Bear safety. Nope.
Yeah.
Yep, those trolls got bamboozled.
Yeah. And Halvor finally got to spend Christmas Eve in his house, which is very nice.
Wait, wasn't it someone else's house?
No, Halvor was the man who owned the cottage, and the unnamed man was from Finnmark, who brought the bear. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we have also two figures really tonight who are quite intertwined, who come from quite far away from Norway. They come from Russia. And that is the figure of Ded Moroz, or Morozko, or Father Frost. He's got a lot of names, goes by many names, and his companion, the Snow Maiden, or Snegorochka. And these two are very interesting, I've found, and they may or may not be old. Again, it's one of those cases where the origins are kind of shrouded, and certainly they were used when Russia went through a period, in the Soviet Union of banning all religion as kind of non-religious figures. But also, they may be older than we think, and I'd like to explore them because they still do endure to this day. And we have a story first, I think we decided, about Snegorochka.
Yeah, sorry, I was typing in the comment section, so...
Yep, gotta respond to them comments.
Yeah, and of course it's just then when you cue me in, so and I was muted and everything. But let's take a listen to
it's
the...
Jewel.
Yeah, and Blue Monday. Good to see you guys. Yeah, let's listen to the Snow Maiden.
The Snow Maiden. Deep in the forests of northern Russia, in an isba, log hut, lived an old woodcutter and his wife. Times were hard, for winter had set in, and deep snow covered the ground. The woodcutter and his wife were both kind and hard-working, but they were also sad and lonely, for they were childless, and there was no one to help care for them, or to help them through the cold winter. The days passed slowly, with hard work their only comfort. There was wood to chop and find. Then one day, whilst clearing an area so they could chop some more wood, they began to pile together heaps of snow. Remembering the games they used to play in their childhood, the old couple began to shape the snow into human form. By the time they had finished, they were nearly frozen, but the image of the young girl they had created was so beautiful, it was beyond description. "See, wife," said the old man, "our daughter, Snegorochka." Snow Maiden. The old woman smiled, but as her husband turned away, there were tears in her eyes. In the forest the twigs crackled and snapped, for watching the old couple was none other than Father Frost, an old winter god that lived deep in the forest glades. Father Frost felt pity for the couple, and, at that moment, he decided to create for them a daughter in his own spirit. He scratched his long white beard and pondered for a while before raising the great staff he carried into the air. A frizzle of magic ripped through the forest. The old couple turned to admire once more their handiwork, and were astonished to see, standing in their garden, the most beautiful pale maiden with long flaxen hair. She was dressed in a long, light blue robe, its collar and cuffs trimmed with soft fur. Her robe was covered in shimmering snowflakes. On her head was a hat of fur and snowflakes that looked like a little crown, which sparkled like an icy flame. Her shoulders were covered with a cape of dark blue, and on her feet she wore embroidered boots. The old couple blinked in wonder and disbelief, for there in front of them stood their longed-for child. Snegorochka hesitantly came towards them, and their hearts leapt with joy, as the young maid said, "If it pleases you, I have come to be your daughter, and will care for you as my mother and father." The old woman grasped the Snow Maiden's pale hand, and with great joy led her towards the isba. As she followed the couple, Snegorochka felt the trees and the beasts of the winter forest bid her a happy life. Snegorochka helped with the chores and cared well for the couple. They could not believe their luck at having such a kind and beautiful child. Despite this, her parents worried about her. She was so quiet and pale. Sometimes she seemed so frail as to be lifeless. However, there was always light in her bright blue eyes, and her smile could light up a forest. The Snow Maiden loved the trees and the creatures of the forest. In her mortal form, she was a dutiful daughter to her parents, neither complaining or moaning, but there was distance in her eyes. 2 happy months passed, and it was time for the winter celebrations. The town streets, a few miles away, were alive with strollers and entertainers. Happy groups of people sometimes passed through the forest on their way to town. Snegurochka watched the people through a frozen window pane of the Isba. Concerned, the old woman suggested that Snegurochka should join the celebrations, for it must be very dull living all the time with an old couple. But Snegurochka assured them she was very happy. One day, she was looking out of the icy window. She saw Miskir, the son of a nobleman, and his fiancée, Kupava, in the glade where they lived. She saw them lark about and play in the snow. She also observed the very special bond that existed between the young couple, a bond that she had never known. Later that day, as she was out walking in the forest, Father Frost came to her and warned her that she must never form such a friendship with a human, or disaster would befall her. Nevertheless, poor Snegurochka could not stop thinking of the strange bond between the 2 young people. Wanting to understand more, she could resist no longer. The old woman helped her put on her little cape, and she went out to join the people walking towards the town. It was not long before somebody saw the beautiful young lady standing on the edge of town, and Snegurochka was bid welcome. She saw Miskir and Kupava in the crowd, and went to talk to them, but a jealous Kupava pulled Miskir away. Despite this, the crowd was captivated by her beauty and innocence. From then on, Snegurochka came to town quite often. One day, as she enjoyed the bustle of the throngs of people, she heard the strains of the most charming music. It was the songs of a young shepherd boy. He was named Lel. Snegurochka moved closer to hear more. Lel saw the young maiden watching him play his flute, and thought her very beautiful. He fell deeply in love with Snegurochka, and they soon became inseparable. The weeks passed, and spring was approaching. Father Frost was alarmed. He warned Snegurochka to keep away from the bright rays of the sun which could kill her. She must always, he said, stay in the shade. As spring approached, the people left their homes more often. Whenever the young girls came out to stroll and sing, Lel would run to Snegurochka's Isba, tap on the window, and say, "Beautiful Snegurochka, do come and join us." Once she appeared, he never left her side. They would dance in the shade of the trees, but Snegurochka knew there was still something missing. She did not feel the way the humans did. The more she thought of Lel, the more pale and weak she became. But, despite this, she sought out Mother Spring in the forest, and asked if she could feel the special bond the humans felt. Mother Spring said she would grant her wish, but if she followed this path, she would surely perish. Snegurochka went sadly home. Father Frost continued to watch her from a distance, for he knew what would soon happen to her. For a while, she stayed away from the forest walks, the town and Lel. Then, one beautiful morning, Lel came to Snegurochka's window and pleaded with her to come out with him. Just once, just for a moment. For a long while Snegurochka refused to listen, but finally her heart could no longer resist. She realized she could hide away forever, or enjoy, if only briefly, what it was like to be really human. She walked with Lel to the edge of the birch forest. "Lel, play your flute for me," she asked. Her heart felt warm. She stood before Lel. There was so little life left in her. Her pale face looked bloodless, and her arms and legs tingled. the young man played his flute. She listened to the song and felt love for the first time. Tears rolled down from her eyes. However, she was a creature of ice and snow, and could not survive the warmth she felt in her heart. With the faintest sigh, she began to melt. As they stepped from the forest into the rays of the sun, Lel went to hold Snegorochka, but as he did so, her feet melted beneath her. She fell onto the damp earth and suddenly vanished. There was nothing left but an icy mist, drifting upward into the blue sky. As the Snow Maiden faded away, spring spread over the land. The frost retreated, and the small flowers of the fields began to bloom. Everyone was cheered by the return of spring. Everyone, that is, except the young shepherd, who felt desolate and cold, despite the warmth of the sun. As for the old couple, they felt their loss deeply, but in their hearts they had always known the magic could not last. They were just thankful for the beautiful Snow Maiden, who had brought such warmth and joy to their lives, and given them hope in the depths of winter. But what of the Snow Maiden? Well, it is said that as she melted away, her spirit was caught by Father Frost, who retreated to far lands with the advance of Mother Spring. He took the spirit of his daughter across the stars to the frozen lands of the north, where she again took the form of a beautiful young woman. Here she plays all through the summer on the frozen seas. But each year in winter, on the first day of the new year, Father Frost and the Snow Maiden return to Russia in their troika sleigh, and they continue to work their magic, as they did long ago for the woodcutter and his wife, for those who are good and kind, particularly the children, bringing them small gifts and helping to make their dreams come true.
Okay, so there we had our little Snow Maiden. That is obviously a seasonal girl. Naturally, she would have a bit of trouble getting through winter. No, I mean summer.
Yes, she would indeed.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be too much of a good time for her. Can't take a holiday to Magaluf, definitely.
No.
Yeah.
And she did end up as a puddle, so yeah. But at least Father Frost came and took her soul away. So, but it is a very beautiful story.
It is indeed. I do think the Russians do have, a lot of that sort of thing where they're known for quite a fatalism about life. But that one was, reasonably happy with the ending there.
Yeah.
But yes.
But they do have a very harsh climate, so death isn't far away. So
no, it's true. It's true. I mean, to be fair, that's a little similar to it's a little similar to how it is in sort of the very northern extremes of Europe and Scandinavia. Maybe you have similarly harsh conditions in some places. I would think.
It's quite a big difference between the coastal areas and inland. The coast of northern Norway can have a mean temperature that is higher than Oslo throughout the year, because the winters are quite mild there, actually. But Oslo is deep within a fjord, so it got more of a middle climate, you could say. It's part coastal, but they don't have to go very far inland before it gets really cold. And the same in northern Norway as well. The coast can be around freezing, and you go a little bit inland and it's minus 35, so it can be quite harsh differences. And yes, Canadian, it is a very romantic story.
Oh, by the way, shout out to the YouTube chat turning into a debate about types of Scottish sausage.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I've got new food items on my food list to get enriched in the culinary area for when
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where
island.
you'd find square sausage. You'd have to be in Scotland for that one.
Yeah, well, I do intend to visit Scotland.
They refer to normal sausage as Lynx sausage.
Ah.
Which is very weird.
Maybe I shouldn't go by my nick when I go there. In case someone wants to turn me into a sausage.
Oh no. But yeah. So when it comes to Snow Maiden, she seems to have first appeared in writing in about the 19th century. It's been argued by some that, the roots of this character can be found in Slavic pagan beliefs. And others argue that the character isn't found in the early Slavic myths, and the story may have originated to myths and folk tales that weren't of Russian origin. It's not actually known what the original origin of this was, because before the mid-19th century there was just not a lot of interest in recording Russian folk beliefs. And it was published by a guy called Alexander Nikolaevich Afanasyev in the 1850s and 60s, published within like a whole 8 volumes of folk tales. And I hadn't heard of this collection before, but it's called The Poetic Outlook on Nature by the Slavs. That was the largest folktale collection published by any one person in the world. So yeah, if I can come across that somehow, it sounds like a very big collection to dig into. But Snegorochka was in the second volume, and people really, really loved it. It's been made into a play with music by Tchaikovsky. I might find some of that, post it out. It's been made into a ballet by the composer Ludwig Minkus, and it was also adapted into an opera by Rimsky-Korsakov. Both surname. Yeah. So that's definitely captured people's imagination and been really picked up by some big names.
Yeah,
and it did to me. It did to me have, echoes of paganism, definitely. What were you about to say, Lynx?
I was just going to say that it's not surprising it got picked up, because it is a very interesting story. It's beautiful and romantic and bittersweet and everything, so it does well to be made into something more than just a folk story.
Yeah, certainly it does. It is very much. It's not quite a happy ending, and I find it interesting, particularly the association of the spring. Mother Spring is the only one who can provide love. I guess that's because Mother Spring is also the only one who can provide new life. And that is, I think, where new life starts, isn't it? In love. So it's interesting that she is the only one able to sort of provide that ability to Snegorochka. So yeah, and I found it interesting as well. I found it interesting that ice creatures are not capable of human emotions such as love. That sort of reminds me of like frost giants.
Mm-hmm.
They're not exactly capable of all the human emotions and things, and they're not capable of the things that the gods are. And so that, because they've existed with it for so long, drives them to become very jealous. In their case. But yeah, and I think that it's interesting. Like winter can't create the spirit of winter can't actually create. He's only imitated, really, in terms of a human. He's imitated, and he's made a creation that is not permanent. So I found that quite symbolic.
Um, he can only create with his elements, which is ice. So he is very tied to his element and to his season, and that is quite interesting, I think. And also what you said with love sort of being the start of life in many ways, and I would definitely say that is the case for women. You know, we all know the stereotypical young girl who falls in love for the first time, or you know, have a crush on someone or something. So yeah, it is it's a start of a new phase of life.
It really is quite hard to find information about who, like in Slavic paganism, could have influenced Snigorochka. And I can't really see actually a direct Slavic deity or anything that might have influenced her, but she has gone through a lot of change over the years, and she's a little bit of a commercialized figure now, I think, along with Deb Moroz or Morosco himself. And there are costumes of her which I think are a bit shorter than what she would have worn. I think so. Just a hunch.
That tends to happen. Kies Kardashian mentioned Xena Warrior Princess the other day. She was visiting her father, and that was going on the TV or something. And Xena's sidekick, Gabrielle, I think her name was. I watched it occasionally when I was quite young. But it was her outfit tended to shrink for every new season that started, so they should have gotten a new washing lady or something. Yes.
Your clothes keep coming back smaller. You gotta question. Is your dry cleaner doing it properly?
Yeah, maybe the budget couldn't allow a more skilled washerwoman, so but you know, that's how it is these days with the clothing just getting shorter and shorter, so
yeah, it's like shops just can't afford to put material on things anymore.
No.
Charge more for less. Yeah, I can see why they've done it. It's a good business model.
Yeah, maybe to take on less is more. You know, in the business sense.
It could be the philosophy, couldn't it?
maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, also just the final sort of thing that I found quite curious about the Snegorochka story is her love of being associated with playing the flute. And, you know, we have a lot of symbolism in flutes. Magical items, as enchanting items, as sort of pipes and flutes are sometimes the instruments of horned gods and nature gods. And I think maybe his flute represented the enchanting power of love. And that it is in some way a form of magic. Or
Yeah,
it
well,
might have been literally magical.
Yeah, just think about how a musician can stir your emotions with their playing, and how a song can, you know, just hit you really hard, like the one we started the show with today. Ever since I was a kid, when I hear it, I get tears in my eyes. So, and yes, it does take my mind to Pan, that old deity, and also the Norwegian Nøkken, though he was a fiddler more than a flutist. You know, it just reminds me of the same thing,
Yes.
really.
No, it is. It's sort of the associations that I had with that as well. But certainly, in terms of information, I've been able to find probably a bit more about Morosko, who's really the main dude when it comes to Russian gift-giving season. But we shall come to him later. I think we were having one of your stories now.
Yeah.
Lynx.
Yeah. It is one of those bad stories. It is The Little Match Girl by H.C. Andersen, the Danish writer. So you could say that it's more of a New Year story, but when I was growing up, I usually heard that run in the time up to Christmas. So I always think of that when it comes close to Christmas. So yeah, let's go over to that one.
Certainly a touching story. Yes,
Yeah.
let's have that.
Yeah, in a way, I feel it's a bit too sad for a Christmas show, but you know, tradition.
We're not ending on it.
No, we're not ending on it. We made sure of that. It's we can't end the show like that. So there is one more story after that one. So yeah, sit back and keep a napkin close for those tears. The Little Match Girl. It was terribly cold. It snowed and was already almost dark. And evening came on, the last evening of the year. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl, bareheaded and barefoot, was walking through the streets. When she left her own house, she certainly had slippers on. But of what use were they? They were very big slippers, and her mother had used them till then. So big were they. The little maid lost them as she slipped across the road, where two carriages were rattling by terribly fast. One slipper was not to be found again, and a boy had seized the other and run away with it. He thought he could use it very well as a cradle some day when he had children of his own. So now the little girl went with her naked little feet, which were quite red and blue with the cold. In an old apron she carried a number of matches, and a bundle of them in her hands. No one had bought anything from her all day, and no one had given her a farthing. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along, a picture of misery, poor little girl. The snowflakes covered her long fair hair, which fell in pretty curls over her neck, but she did not think of that now. In all the windows lights were shining, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she thought of that. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she sat down, cowering. She had drawn up her little feet, but she was still colder, and she did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches, and did not bring a farthing of money. From her father she would certainly receive a beating, and besides, it was cold at home, for they had nothing over them but a roof through which the wind whistled through the largest rents that had been stopped with straw and rags. Her little hands were almost benumbed with the cold. Ah, a match might do her good, if she could only draw one from the bundle and rub it against the wall and warm her hands at it. She drew one out. How it spluttered and burned! It was a warm, bright flame, like a little candle, when she held her hands over it. It was a wonderful little light. It really seemed to the little girl as if she sat before a great polished stove with bright brass feet and a brass cover. How the fire burned! How comfortable it was! But the little flame went out. The stove vanished, and she had only the remains of the burned match in her hand. A second was rubbed against the wall. It burned up, and when the light fell upon the wall, it became transparent, like a thin veil, and she could see through it into the room. On the table a snow-white cloth was spread. Upon it stood a shining dinner service. The roast goose smoked gloriously, stuffed with apples and dried plums. And what was still more splendid to behold, the goose hopped down from the dish and waddled along the floor with a knife and fork in its breast to the little girl. Then the match went out, and only the thick, damp, cold wall was before her. She lighted another match. Then she was sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. It was greater and more ornamented than the one she had seen through the glass door at the rich merchant's. Thousands of candles burned upon the green branches, and colored pictures, like those in the print shops, looked down upon them. The little girl stretched forth her hand towards them. Then the match went out. The Christmas lights mounted higher. She saw them now as stars in the sky. One of them fell down, forming a long line of fire. Now someone is dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only person who had loved her, and who was now dead, had told her that when a star fell down, a soul mounted up to God. She rubbed another match against the wall. It became bright again, and in the brightness the old grandmother stood clear and shining, mild and lovely. "Grandmother," cried the child, "oh, take me with you. I know you will go when the match is burned out. You will vanish like the warm fire, the warm food, and the glorious Christmas tree." And she hastily rubbed the whole bundle of matches, for she wished to hold her grandmother fast. And the matches burned with such a glow that it became brighter than the middle of the day. Grandmother had never been so large or so beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and both flew in brightness and joy above the earth, very, very high, and up there was neither cold, nor hunger, nor care. They were with God. But in the corner, leaning against the wall, sat a poor girl with red cheeks and smiling mouth, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. The New Year's sun rose upon a little corpse. The child sat there, stiff and cold, with the matches of which one bundle was burned. She wanted to warm herself, the people said. No one imagined what a beautiful thing she had seen, and in what glory she had gone in with her grandmother to the New Year's Day. Yeah, so I hope you, excuse me, I hope you all have dried your eyes and had that napkin close at hand. I always found that so sad, of course, when I was a kid, but reading it again now, I haven't read it for quite a few years. It was somewhat better ending than what I remember, because I never really noticed that, yes, she died, but she died happy.
Yeah.
In the arms of her grandmother. So
although,
it was more...
you'd get some pessimistic atheist coming along and being like, that was cold hallucinations.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But no, yeah. I believe in the spirits.
Yeah, so do I.
I believe the spirits can come and your ancestors' spirits will probably come and take you when you are dead.
Yeah, I've heard too many stories to think otherwise. So I'm definitely in that category as well. But what she sees with the matches is quite interesting, I think, and how much they are warming her. You know, a match isn't that big of a fire. Even a candle is a lot hotter. So yeah, that.
That is interesting. There does seem to be something like magical about it going on there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I do wonder how big feet her mother had, considering her slipper could be used as a cradle.
I know. Just that was the most random line in the thing. It's a very sad story, but like at that line I was just like, lol, what? Like just like, oh man. All I needed was this shoe. Now I have a cradle for my baby. So I'm just imagining this little match girl like wandering around like in shoes that were like the size of a flipping cot.
Yeah, you know, clown like, shoes doesn't even come close to it.
Big clown shoes. Huge shoes.
You know,
no wonder nobody's bought matches off you all day. They're freaked out by your massive shoes.
Yeah, they're afraid to step on your toes. Oh, but you know,
I think you've got feet that huge.
Yeah, I didn't actually remember that thing from when I was a kid. So I was more expecting that, you know, they were too poor to afford shoes for her, or some people came and stole them from her, you know, by being rough or anything. But no, she slipped and one disappeared and the other was taken as a cradle, of all things.
Yeah, could have just been a very small baby, to be fair.
Yeah.
Some babies, they do get born very, very small.
Yeah, some of them do. Others are fairly large.
It just reminds me a little bit with her grandma coming back of a female ancestor sort of spirit. Like, I wonder, like, part of me wonders just because of my own sort of background, if that's her fetch. Probably Hans Christian Andersen wasn't writing that, but like, you wonder what form your fetch would take to you. You know, upon coming on your death. And that is the sort of female spirit, your ancestors. At least, you know, if you follow Norse Anglo-Saxon paganism, you do believe that they will turn up and argue your case in the court of the gods, unless you've done something really, really bad. that not even your fetch would turn up to defend you for.
Yeah. Yeah, it does take the mind in that line, definitely. And in particular with as she is so close to her grandmother when she lived. You know, the line, the only one who ever loved her was her grandmother. So life must have been quite hard after she died.
Indeed, it must have been.
Yeah.
But we shall perhaps move on to a story with a bit of a fairer, happier outcome.
Yeah.
Oh. Hello, Red-Pilled Lady.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Yes, I did say we wasn't going to end on that sad note, so this story is much more wholesome, and it might actually remind you of some of the other stories we have read so far, for those who have followed us through this season. So yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. What was it called again? Morosco. Yeah, okay.
Yes. That's about as best as I can do, anyway.
Yeah. Then we're turning it over to Morosco.
Morosco, or Father Frost. Once there lived an old man and an old woman. The old man had his daughter, and the old woman had her own daughter. The old woman pampered her daughter, doted on her, and made the old man's daughter do all the work, scolding her for everything, abusing her, and not giving her enough food. The girl did all the work she was ordered. She did everything quite brilliantly. People would look at her and could hardly praise her enough. But when they saw the old woman's daughter, they would say, "Here she is. She cannot weave or spin. She is idle and lazy." The old woman became even angrier and even more quarrelsome. Consumed with rage and jealousy, she could think of nothing else but to kill her husband's daughter. One day, the old man went to the market in the town. The evil old woman colluded with her daughter. "Now we will do in this hateful girl." The old woman called to the girl and ordered her, "Go to the wood and bring some brushwood." "We have quite enough brushwood," the girl answered. The old woman started crying and stamping her feet. She fell on the girl together with her daughter and pushed her out of the hut. The girl saw that there was nothing to be done, and she went to get the wood. The frost was crackling, the wind was howling, and there was a heavy snowstorm. The old woman with her daughter were warm in the hut, and said to each other, "The hateful girl will not come back. She will freeze to death in the woods." So the girl went into the forest, sat under a thick fir tree, and did not know where to go and what to do. Suddenly she heard crackling noises, like the crackling of ice and frost. It was Morosco, riding through the fir grove and birch forest and skipping from tree to tree, the snow crunching. He descended from the fir tree and said, "How do you do, fairy maiden? Why have you come to my wood on such a dreadfully cold night?" Morosco listened to her explanation and said, "No, fairy maiden, you were not sent here for brushwood." "Well, if you've come to my wood, then show me how good of a mistress you are." She was given a tow and distaff. "Spin threads out of this tow, weave the cloth, and sew me a shirt out of that cloth." Then he left. The girl never questioned or objected, and started to work at once. When her fingers were frozen, she would breathe on them to warm them up, and work on. The whole night she did not stop working. She only thought of one thing: how to sew the shirt. In the morning she heard the crackling noises near the fir tree again, and knew that Morozko was back. He looked at the shirt and was very pleased. He praised her. "Well done, fairy maiden. You worked well." Then Morozko brought forth a large trunk, put it in front of the girl, and said, "The work fits the reward." He then put on a warm fur coat on the girl, tied a patterned kerchief around her head, and led her to the road. "Goodbye, fairy maiden. Here you will find good people to help you get home." As he said that, he disappeared as if he had never been there. At that time the old man came back home. "Where is my daughter?" he asked. "She went to the wood for brushwood and did not come back." The old man was anxious for his daughter, so instead of unharnessing the horse, he drove towards the wood, and after a while he saw his daughter, standing near the road, well dressed and merry. The relieved old man seated her in his sledge, loaded Morozko's trunk full of presents, and took her home. The evil old woman with her daughter were sitting at the table, eating pies, and said, "Well, she surely will not come back home alive. The old man will return her body." However, the dog was barking near the stove, and it spoke and said, "Bow wow, bow wow. The old man's daughter is going to bring expensive presents, and no one will marry the old woman's daughter." The old woman gave pies to the dog, and when that failed, beat her with the poker. "Shut up, you nasty hound. Say it. The old woman's daughter will be married, and the old man's daughter will be brought back dead." But the dog repeated again and again, "The old man's daughter will bring presents, and the old woman's daughter will never be married." Then they heard the squeak at the gates. The door to the hut was opened, and the girl came in, well dressed and rosy-cheeked, and some of the townspeople brought in a large trunk following her, decorated with patterns reminiscent of frost. The old woman and her daughter rushed to examine the trunk. They started to take out and marvel at the wonderful clothes. They laid them out on the benches and incredulously asked, "Who gave you such expensive presents?" As soon as the old woman learned that Morozko had given the presents to the girl, she began to bustle about and wrap up her daughter warmly. She gave her a bundle with some pies, and told the old man to take her to the woods. "I bet she'll bring back 2 such trunks." The old man took the old woman's daughter to the wood, and left her under the high fir tree. She stood looking around, scowling and griping. "Why is that Morozko not here yet? Where has the lazy so-and-so disappeared to?" Then she heard the crackle of frost. Morozko was riding through the fir grove and the birch forest, and skipping from tree to tree, snow crunching. He jumped down from the fir tree and asked, "Why have you come to me, fairy maiden? Don't you know that? I have come for expensive presents like the ones you gave the old woman's girl." Morozko smiled and said, "Well, you show me first what a good mistress you are. Knit me some mittens." He gave her a knitting needle and a ball of wool, and left. The old woman's daughter threw the knitting needles into the snow, pushed the ball of wool around with her foot. Look what that old fool came up with. Who ever heard of such a thing as to knit in such dreadful cold? I would get my fingers frostbitten. In the morning there came the cracks and crunches, and Morozko appeared. "Well, fairy maiden, why don't you show me how you coped with my task?" The old woman's daughter rushed at him. "What? Do you think I have done your work, you old noodle? Are you blind? Can't you see? I'm chilled to the bones waiting for you here. I'm half dead." "Well, the work fixed the reward," Morozko said. She shook like his beard as a huge snowstorm with a blizzard began. All the paths and all the roads were covered, and Morosco disappeared as if he had never been there. The old woman's daughter stumbled along without knowing the road, and came to a deep ravine. She tumbled in, and there she was covered with snow. In the morning, the old woman shook the old man awake, very early, and ordered him to go to the wood to collect her daughter. She herself started to bake pies. The dog was sitting under the couch and barking. Bow wow! Bow wow! The old woman's daughter will not come back from the wood. The old woman threw pies at the dog and lashed at her with the poker. Shut up, nasty! Eat your pie, and never say such things again. Better yet, say that the old woman's daughter is going to bring expensive gifts, and the old man's daughter will never find a fiancé. The dog ate the pie, but repeated again. Bow wow! Bow wow! Bow wow! The old man's daughter will certainly marry, and the old woman's daughter will never come back from the wood. The old woman was startled. What if something bad is going to happen to my daughter? What if they lose the expensive gifts on the road? I will run and follow the old man. She put on a fur coat and ran to the wood. The snowstorm was howling and whirling even stronger. The whole road was covered in snow. The evil woman lost her way, and she too was covered in snow. The old man was out looking for the old woman's daughter for some time and could not find her. When he came back, his wife was not there. He gathered the neighbours. They all started to look for the old woman and her daughter. They looked and looked. They dug through all the snowdrifts and still did not find them, and the old man lived together with his daughter. When spring came, a fine young man, a smith from the smithy, asked for her hand in marriage. They had a merry wedding and lived in love and harmony, and so they live now.
So that was the last story for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I most definitely did. And it's one of those that are similar to some of the others we have had over the season. So that is quite interesting that that motif keeps popping up.
It is indeed sort of the kind and unkind girl. Like that's an established category, but also what isn't named as directly really its own category is having these tasks as well of feminine initiation and passing them or not passing them. Now, one thing which I really find quite symbolic, which I'll put a bookmark in and come back to, is that our protagonist gets handed a toe or towel and distaff. I found quite interesting, because I know those have associations. But yeah, in terms of who this guy is, Deb Moros, or Morosco. So, sort of at the beginning of the Soviet era, communists banned this dude. They banned this figure. But they couldn't seem to do that, because they sort of embraced him eventually instead, and he became an important part of Soviet culture. And he's really been depicted as bringing presents to well-mannered children, often delivering them in person on New Year's Eve. As we discussed, he does have a helper called Snigorochka. In the story we read, he creates her directly. In some stories, she's said to be his granddaughter, and like that story, often said to be made of snow. And she wears long silver blue robes, a furry cap, or a snowflake-like crown. And Ded Moros or Morozko, is known for wearing a heel-length fur coat, a semi-round fur hat, and valenki, which are these very particular Russian boots made of wool felt, sort of hardened wool felt, and they're very. I'm sure if we had a picture, you'd know exactly the sort that I mean, but they look very sort of like really stiff socks. He has a very long white beard, and he walks with a long magic staff, and he's got a sleigh, or troika in Russian. So yeah, he's associated with a particular place, and that's Veliki Ustyug. That's a town in Russia. And, people sort of refer to him as a sort of wizard of winter, like a magic figure. And according to some sources in Slavic mythology, he might be a snow demon, but it's not entirely sure, or at least people are saying that term didn't always have negative connotations. And some sources are claiming him to be a literal god of frost and ice. So yeah, his clothing sort of is meant to look like a Russian nobleman from before Russia's sort of westernization. And it's his coats, therefore, are very often very richly embroidered with all sorts of designs. And a traditional fur-trimmed cap. You'd never see him in a Santa hat. He's not a Santa ripoff. Debenrotz doesn't do the hat. He thinks it looks stupid. He's got his own thing.
Yeah. Unlike how the Nissa have merged with Saint Nick in the Scandinavian. Right, Meow.
Oh.
Thank you so much for the diamond and the ice cream and the lemon.
Thank you very much.
Very
much indeed.
Yeah, and it sounds like you are going to have a very sweet and good tasting Sunday. So have fun making sweets and Christmas presents. So and of course, thank you for hosting.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, and Boudica is also hosting us, so thank you very much. And Tim Murdoch came in and hosted us a bit earlier, so thank you, Tim. We always appreciate you coming and hosting us.
Canadian asked what was the evil Santa called? Krampus. He's not exactly evil Santa. He's more sort of, he's very much the opposite. He does go around and give you coal and beat you with sticks if you're being bad. But again, conversations with the wind. Norse Abnormocracy's channel, White Art Collective BitChute, we talk all about the Krampus on that particular episode in the conversational section. And Lynx has got a story in the poetry and literature bit.
Yeah, and last week I also did a story that is the French version of Krampus. It's actually a Canadian story, but it derives from the French immigrants there, and that goes around a butcher who has some cannibalistic tendencies. The stories are up on our YouTube channel, so you can go there and check them out. We are going to spam you with stories in the next few weeks, so
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and right, Meow, we are so happy that you like what we do. We have fun doing these shows, and we're really happy that people are liking them.
We do indeed have lots of fun doing this show.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we have Dimorot's. There is really a debate about whether this figure was really popular before the revolution. I don't see why there's much of a debate, because, it's been stated that they tried to ban him. And there's a bit debate also about whether he's a god, and some are calling him the Slavic counterpart of the god Odin. There are reports of him throwing misbehaving children into a large sack and then ransoming them to their parents. I mean, does it sound like Odin? I mean, yeah, it kind of sounds like Odin. He's not. He's very much. He's not always the fairest, and it can sometimes be disadvantageous to be his champion or to be helped by him. He might just want to claim you for Valhalla. But also he's someone who's not certainly not bad. He's got, the best interest of Asgard and the whole of Midgard and the best interest of everyone in mind. And so there seems to be their nuance there as well. This Morozko figure. And he seems to have magical powers. He seems to have claimed Snigorochka's spirit, and maybe that gives him associations with death like Odin has. He seems ultimately, benevolent. I think Odin is highest in the pantheon because he is the priest archetype. Definitely, is my personal view.
Yeah.
And so if Morozko is some sort of echo of, a Slavic equivalent to Odin, that would make sense that he's remained, because he would have obviously been very, very significant. Yeah. And yeah, so some things that I noticed, being given a toe and distaff, again, by Morozko, that's very Odin. Odin would have those tools, probably because they are associated with Seithr. Cider. I never know how to pronounce it. It's basically a form of Norse ritual divination, sort of ritual, like divination magic, with which the distaff is associated. And that was taught to the Aesir by Freya. So it's very associated, and Odin is basically the only male god that can do it. Otherwise, the art is mostly practiced by Freya and Frigg, in that they are actually different goddesses. I think they're different aspects.
Yeah.
The same goddess. Definitely.
Yeah, that can definitely be the case, and it definitely had ties to being initiated into womanhood. It also took my mind to the Norns and the three fates.
Yes, that's the other thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That does come to mind when you do think of the spinning, the fates and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, that was maybe just, it seemed an odd thing for the Russian who's done this to have translated it as fairy maiden. And Morozko keeps calling them that. Maybe because he doesn't think that humans would be silly enough to be out and about in such weather.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Very repeatedly stated, fairy maiden. And I didn't wish to correct it to fair maiden, because I think that was intentional.
Yeah,
on the part
that
of
is.
That translator.
That is one of the things that can be hard to say with translations. And when we did our episode on the heroines, I had to change one of the stories because the translation didn't fit right with the motive for me. where the woman was gifted. It was a swift, and that is for measuring a length of yarn. And the translation had something else, but with the two other gifts, it was so clear that she was being offered gift for basically eternal life. It was something to card the yarn with, the wool with, so that it, the preparation before you spin it. But with the swift, it directly ties it to the three fates. She did not get a scissor, but she got a golden apple, and those are connected with giving eternal life. So that tie into the fates was too strong for me, so I had to change it back to what the Norwegian version said. So you do get into those kind of conundrums at times, and if you don't, and if sometimes when you don't know the context of the original language, it can be very hard to really get the meaning.
It can be indeed very confusing, and I wonder, because I know a Russian or two. I probably haven't spoken to them, but I think I know a couple of Russians, or people who speak Russian. Can maybe get them to look at the story. I mean, they usually Russians are usually based.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to hear the perspective from some Russians.
But another thing which really said Odin to me as well is the whole thing with the dog. Dogs foretelling what Father Frost is going to do. It's kind of interesting because dogs are definitely associated with Odin. I mean, wolves at any rate. He has two of those. Gary, who's called the greedy one, or the ravenous one. So, that's what his name means. And Freki, who's covetous, avaricious. And Frigg also tricks a favourite of his into accidentally torturing him when he's in disguise. They had some sort of a bet on don't ask. I might have to tweet that poetic phone now, because that lacks context. But Frigg, his wife, tricks someone into torturing him because she said, a bad wizard's going to come to town. He's bad. And how you'll know is that your dogs won't bark at him. And then Odin comes along, and of course the dogs don't bark at him.
Yeah.
So his former favourite ends up being very unhospitable, because that's what Frigg has said. I've heard your favourite is he's really, really stingy. He doesn't follow hospitality rules, which was a massive burn in Old Norse society. Getting accused of not being hospitable.
Yeah.
So the association of dogs having some sort of kinship with Morosco is intriguing in that regard. Yeah. And then there's this phrase that I've rewritten as the work fits the reward. It was originally like work, like reward. I think that would have made sense. But I just wanted to make sure that it was extra clear, really.
Yeah.
And it's true. They both get fitting rewards for their efforts.
Yeah.
Good shirt, lots of clothes. No mittens, death.
Yeah.
Maybe that last one's a bit disproportionate, but
well,
again, this could be Odin we're dealing with.
Yeah, and also it has a practical lesson in it for the children, you know. In an environment like that, you have to work if you want to survive the winter. You know, you
It's
can't
true.
just sit there and
Not knit mittens,
no.
because then your fingers will freeze off and you will probably die.
Yeah, then you can't just sit there and you know, what's the expression? Something with your thumbs.
Twiddle your thumbs.
Yeah, you can't
That's
do
it.
that if the thumb is lost. So yeah, it's better to work a bit to keep the thumb. So yeah, it's definitely
That's true.
a very practical lesson. It the theme of the distaff reminds me of a saying in Norway, with the winning going up in the spinning. It's that's a very direct translation, so it might be done better, but this is on the fly. And it's basically from one of our folk tales where this guy is seeking after a bride, so he goes visiting a family with a daughter that is very beautiful and everything, and there is wool on the distaff. So when they go out for a bit, he hides the key to the food storage in the wool. And then he comes back some weeks later and they comment that they can't find the key. Which of course they would have done if she was actually doing any spinning.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so you know, you don't want a lazy wife. So
It's a good way to check.
yeah, we have a few short
Yeah.
stories like that to check if you know, they are good workers and if they are cleanly enough for your taste and everything. So yeah, there are some quite practical lessons in the old stories as well.
It's true. I mean, and that is what you needed. A practical mindset most of the time. Because
Yeah,
these weren't the art forms of sort of your upper classes. They were the stories that the people told among themselves
yeah.
quite a lot of the times.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
one thing we hear quite a bit about is the so-called Protestant work ethics. I do wonder if that is due to the Protestant faith or because you have to. Because those countries are also associated with quite harsh climate, in particular in winter. So in order to get through that, you have to work hard. So, you know, is it the environment or is it the faith?
Yeah, indeed. That's an interesting question. I think, yeah, faith sort of adapts itself
Yeah,
to people's, definitely.
yeah,
You
it
can't
sure
say that
does.
Christianity came to Europe and remained untouched. We shaped it in
Yeah.
a lot of our own ways.
Yeah, you know, it's a two-way communication, so to speak. So it's not so static that you might otherwise think, and I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, that's it for our stories tonight.
Yeah,
We have no more stories.
Lycomedes came with
Yeah.
with a comment in
hello.
YouTube, and good evening, good to see you. He asked if it's the biospirit, and that might be the case.
Yes, probably could be. Because certainly I do believe in that concept myself.
Yeah, so
That
do
you
I.
have a certain spiritual race and probably a body of that particular race is going to be most likely to be carrying a soul of that particular race.
Yeah.
Although I think that possibly leaves room for some exceptions. You know, when you've met, so maybe people have met one or two people who didn't seem to be spiritually of their own country. I've met one or two people like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That is also a very interesting concept and easy to get lost in.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think I've read quite enough Evola to really take it on.
No.
I'm just like, leave that to
neither have I.
Philosophy Cat. Leave it to Philosophy Cat.
Yeah.
Go ask the nice Canadian expert.
Yeah. I will admit that I would like to, take a few months where I only read his stuff and do nothing else, but that would be a bit unpractical. But
yeah,
I would
and by
love
the end of it, by the end of it, nobody would understand what you were saying.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Just be like, you're all so unascended. Everybody just be like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, from what I have read so far, I haven't had time to read as much as I'd like, but from what I've read so far, he put into words feelings that I've had since I was a kid, for example, with royalty. Because in one way I have always been a monarchist, but I never understood why, because I can't say that I'm a very big fan of the royals we have today in any country, really. So I couldn't really, square those two things. But when reading about that and having Kat explain it in her series on Revolt Against the Modern World, it's, that's why. Yeah, you're basically writing my mind. So
he makes a lot of sense. Well, once you get around the sheer amount of words and understand what is being said, he makes a lot of sense. Mercia Eliada is perhaps a bit like him, but slightly less words going on. I think reading both of them is quite enlightening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we should put some money in the chest.
Yeah, we should. If you're looking for the link to Philosophy Cat, I can find her YouTube. The one in the D-Live chat. So just give me a second.
Yes. Oh yes, crit kill. Yep. Yeah, he really did have a massive impact on Christianity. Henry VIII. Better or worse? Not a fan of the Church of England. Too much. I think a lot of traditional sort of people aren't too much these days. Right, that's 100 lemons added to the chest.
Yeah, let's find out who is the winners tonight.
We do like to introduce people to Philosophy Cat, though, Correct Kill, definitely, because she's got just a lot of breakdowns of some really freaking wordy stuff that is sometimes quite hard to get into and get started with. And I know her videos about Revolt of the Modern World helped me to go and actually look at Revolt against the Modern World with a vague idea of what was going on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, always recommend, definitely. Right.
Yeah. And speaking of recommending, No White Guilt is live right now for those who
Oh yeah.
are looking for something to do after this. I also see that Guide to
Yes.
Culture is live with Frode Midgard, so that might be something to check out. And also,
gotta
I
check.
think in a couple of hours, I think that Mimir's Brunner will go live. I think it was at midnight English time, so check that out if any are interested. So
Okay.
yeah, the
So
rest is
the
open.
rewards are distributing, yes.
Yeah,
The rewards lemons impending. 5 seconds to lemons. Who got them? A door just closed in my general vicinity. Might be background noise. Oh hey! 2 people got all the lemons this time. It
Oh.
was Critical and 1690 Sparky.
Congratulations.
All the lemons. You got 76 of them, Critical. And Sparky got 44.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the winners. Yes,
That's
and
cool.
Today's stories will be probably up tomorrow.
Oh, thank you very much for those ice creams.
Yeah, thank you. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. All of any donations will go back to the show. That's what we
Yes.
invest in, so it is much appreciated.
Yeah, looking to get things like sound and images and footage and maybe journals
Yeah,
if we want to go quite
we are-
academic.
yeah, we're mostly thinking of audio at the
Yes.
start. Having music and sound clips and everything to use, and we'll go from there. So yeah, we will be live next Sunday at the same time.
We will.
That is 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. British time, and 9 p.m. Central European time. That will be our season finale for this year. And we'll be back on the new year. The date isn't set, but we will most likely keep the same time. So we just have to find which Sunday to start up again.
Oh, thank you very much, Sparky. Thank you for the diamond, indeed.
And we're glad you like it. So yes, we will have our finale next Sunday with some stories and everything. So hope you will join us then.
Yes, we will. I think I might try and dig out a bit of the Charles Dickens. See if I can find a bit of that. I think he's done some quite small ones.
Yeah. We appreciate every ice cream and lemon and
we do.
Diamond and everything, and big shout out to Big Hair Tsunami again for that Ninja Genie. That is very, very generous of you. So yeah,
it's
that
wonderful
is a good
to have you
tsunami.
support Big Hair.
Yeah.
How big is his hair? It's got to be big.
Yeah, probably. It would be interesting to see.
So
yeah, that is us for tonight. So have a wonderful day or evening, depending on where you are, and have a wonderful week. And hopefully, I'll see you next Sunday.
Indeed. see you next
Bye.
Sunday for
Yeah.
the last Sunday of Advent. Goodbye.